All right, and we are live. So, good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to our September movie club. This month we watched Eight and a Half, which is a 1963 Fredrico Fellini movie. We knew we wanted to do Fellini. We kind of just put titles in a hat and drew this one out, and I'm really happy that we did. He directed and co-wrote this. But before we get into the discussion, I'd like to take care of a little bit of housekeeping, my usual stint for the front of these. So this is our movie club, and that is one of 3 media clubs that we have at Dragonfly Arts. Let me go ahead and put my little thing up on the screen here. We also have a music listening club where we listen to an album and discuss it. We had our listening club discussion talking about Blood on the Tracks by Bob Dylan on Friday. So that should be up on the YouTube for you to watch and comment on if that is something that you'd like to do. We also have a quarterly book club, which will be meeting for our Q3 book at the end of next month, October. So you still have time to read Love in the Time of Cholera and join us for that discussion then. I announce our new picks at the first of each month. So if you'd like to know what media we are going to be consuming next, you can visit us in our Facebook group, which is free. And we do a lot of cool things there. I'd highly suggest joining our Saturday morning coffee and creatives call, which we have every week. We talk about problems that plague creative life and try to come up with solutions for them. Or sometimes we just talk about life, depends on how the week's going. If you like us and you'd like to support what we do, you can do that over on Patreon for as little as $2 a month. There is nothing behind that paywall. Everything we do is open to all of our members, but we appreciate any support that you can provide. So without further ado, let's talk about Eight and a Half. Had you guys seen this movie before?
Never heard of it.
I actually haven't seen any Fellini before.
Yeah, I've seen this one countless times because it was actually one of the first DVDs that I ever bought with my own money. So, yeah, I've seen it a lot, but I watched it again this time in 4K.
Oh, nice. Was that like up-resed? I have to assume.
I'm not sure. Actually, this time I used the Criterion Channel stream. So it wasn't a 4K Blu-ray this time.
Okay.
Usually when I do 4K, it's like the Blu-ray version. But I'm not sure if they up-resed it or if it was like a new restoration or anything like that.
Right. Yeah. I'm a little upset that it wasn't the Blu-ray because you always have such fascinating things from the extras that they have on there. I'm going to do something that's a little bit different for this one. It's not something that I normally do. But I kind of want to do a short round of introductions because I kind of think it's a little bit important for the discussion of this movie. I think I'm just going to start at the top because I think we see each other all in the same order. It's not like the Zoom calls where like everybody is in a different position. I think we can see it goes me, Beckett, Tim, Derek. But mostly what I want to know is your relationship to movies and the filmmaking process. So I'm at the top. I can go first. Anybody out there that doesn't know who I am, I'm Rebecca. I am not a filmmaker at all, but I am kind of tangentially related. My husband's a camera guy, a first AC, and as a result, my friend group is primarily, it's mostly people who live set life, directors and actors, directors of photography, a lot of them, camera operators, grips, etc. I have really only been involved in the filmmaking process on the pre-production and post-production sides of things, so I've kind of flanked it. But in terms of like actual set life, I am just kind of a guest on set when I'm there.
I guess I'm next. I'm Beckett. I have a bit of a background in film. I went to college at first to become a screenwriter. So I started in film school and worked on sets after that. And then I was an actor for well, how long did I do that? Like 6 years or so. So I have quite a bit of set experience. Tim?
My turn.
Mhm.
I'm Tim, lifelong cinephile since I was a kid. Have made films. I've directed 2 shorts. I've produced 4 or 5 shorts, and I've composed the score for 1 short. And yeah, my specialty is in the films of the American New Wave and the post-war Italian and French films.
And I am Derek. I've basically, yeah, I am a huge movie fan. I've sort of made movies my life at this point. I um, I haven't been on that many professional sets, but I've done a little bit of everything on a lot of sets. I started out kind of as a screenwriter and script reader, but then I gained experience as a video editor, and then I've directed short films and made animated short films on my own with no crew, and I've um, done a bit of audio recording on set and production assisting on set. So I've done a little bit of everything on the lower rungs of the film industry, but not that much actual like union. Well, I would say no union professional experience. But
Yeah.
I want to add that I have also written, produced, and directed short films.
I think that it's an important distinction because this is a film about making films. And I think that greatly impacts how you consume it as media. So I wanted to make sure that everybody kind of like knew where we were on it because I do think that it heavily influences the way that you interpret this movie and the way that you feel about this movie. And um, a little upset that we all have like a little bit of. I would have loved for somebody that just likes movies and never thought about making a movie to be on this call because I really want to know what their experience is like watching this movie. I want my parents to watch this movie and then explain it to me. um, did you guys like the movie? I mean, 2 of you own it, or one of you own it. The other one just watched it on Criterion Channel, but probably no. You said that it was one of the first things you bought, so 2 of you own it.
Yeah, I think I know how Tim and Eric would answer that question. Or Eric, sorry, Derek.
It's all right.
My brain is toast. So my apologies, Derek.
So how did you interpret this movie? That's a very, very broad question. So I'm looking for like a short answer.
Well, I gotta say, I didn't particularly care for it. It's not really my thing. But as you know, or as people who may have seen some of our discussions in the past know, I am a huge fan of kind of like, oh gosh, my vocabulary is escaping me at the moment. Of what's the word I'm looking for? Weird films. That's not the word.
Surrealism.
Surreal, yeah, surrealism. David Lynch being my all-time favorite. So
I had that thought while I was watching this because I never really liked David Lynch, and it was Derek who put it into words for me of it's more of a vibe feeling than it is like something that you can latch onto. And this also has that, but honestly, like just the cinematography and black and whiteness of it, and I think it is fascinating to talk about. So do I my husband likes it a lot more than me. I like the concept of it. I did not enjoy my experience of watching it, but as we've established, I like things that I can sink my teeth into a little bit more as opposed to kind of just like floating around in a dream world, which is what this movie is. Um,
I will say the cinematography was beautiful.
I rarely see black and white that's this good.
Yeah.
I'm sorry to interrupt. Assuming that we all saw the same, I have and watched the 2019 restoration. So I don't know which, because it's been restored a couple of times. So I don't know which ones you guys watched. The transfer that I watched was absolutely stunningly gorgeous.
Yeah, I don't know.
And in terms of like my overall opinion, I do like the movie a lot. I would say it's probably my favorite movie about the creative part of filmmaking. And watching it this time, I realized that it's kind of more about procrastination, because he's constantly getting distracted and he's never answering questions and things like that. So I think when I was younger and just watching this in high school, I think I liked his character more. And now, I think like a self-centered artist, like the main character here, would maybe be a bit too insufferable. I don't think he's. I don't know. So I maybe like his character less now, but I still like the movie a lot, and I don't think. I mean um, I don't think the movie is trying to say that he's a good guy or anything, of course. But anyway, yeah, I still like it a lot. I would say, and yes, the cinematography is absolutely stunning.
Yeah. Props to the cinematographer Gianni Di Venanzio. Venanzo. I am not good with pronouncing Italian names, so I am going to struggle throughout this call. But that's okay. Did you have like a problem telling the difference between like what was dream and reality in this movie, or like did you just kind of bask in the ambiguity of it?
I don't think I thought too hard about it. Like most of the time when something was not really like, because a lot of the transitions into whether it's his imagination or a dream or a vision or whatever, there's no transition. So it's just very much like, you know, feels like it's part of the scene still, but then somewhere down the road you realize that, oh, this isn't actually happening because it's ridiculous.
So I think it's safe to say that you kind of just lived in the ambiguity a little bit, like
Yeah.
it existed inside the chaos.
I just kind of went with the ride. Yeah.
You know, as I posted on Facebook about it. I've lost count how many times I've watched this film, and I always find something new about it. But I found even more this time because this is the first time I've watched this film for a film club. So I actually thought about it more, and I took copious notes, realizing things that some things I already knew were there, and I just don't think I turned them into language in my head. And some things that were brand new for me. And just off of what Beckett just said, my first note here is fluidity of time, similar to blood on the tracks. And the next is a question: is the entire film a dream/nightmare?
I love that comparison. I love it when we have two discussions about two different medias and we can like kind of push them together.
Yeah, I think because he doesn't call out the transitions, you recognize that he's in a dream state or a fantasy state because of the absurdity or the fantasticness of the particular sequence. Other than that, he doesn't really call attention to it. And there are some things that sit on the cusp between the two where you're not sure whether you are in Guido's reality or whether you're in one of the fantasies. And my very next line is, where do reality and dream begin and end? You know, those three notes in a row there.
There's a kind of chaos to it that is like kind of a part of the point, and I have two different things that come to my mind with it, and I'm trying to figure out if I can combine them together in my head. So pardon for the chaos that is about to be the next few sentences that come out of my mouth as I try to figure this out. But a lot of this is a film about making a movie that is in fact the movie that we're watching, which is just a bonkers plot line. But there's kind of this chaoticness to Guido, the main character's mind. And a part of me wonders if that like is something that has to be a part of the process, or if that was like more of a hindrance to the process. Like, did he need more control to actually make this movie a thing? Was he too chaotic in his mind? But also, the parts of the movie that are real are kind of boring. Like, it's all people just talking about like minute details that have to happen for this movie. And so, like, do you think that that chaoticness is like something that has to happen for the creativity of the movie? Do you think that was just his own chaos that needed to be controlled in some way, like to escape the boringness that is the actual making of a movie? Did any of that make sense? Like, I feel like I have these two thoughts in my head.
I mean, I'm looking at my notes, and you've covered several of them here. I wrote
Yes.
desire for control, the trials of a creator, particularly in regards to the demands of others. But I read this quote from Stephanie Zacharek. I went through the Criterion collection. For each film they have articles about the film that have been written for the DVD Blu-ray books. And there's this quote from Zacharek. She says, "But really, 8.5 is for any creative person who has ever looked up from the sketch pad, the laptop, the blank sheet of staff paper, and wailed to the heavens, 'I got nothing!'" Guido Anselmi, even with all his flaws, is still the patron saint of the stuck.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely fair for this movie, especially. Should we talk about why it's called 8.5 and how this movie came to be?
Sure, if you like.
Sorry, I watched Derek like smirk slightly.
No, I think it's really a meta movie. I think Fellini himself was kind of stuck with writer's block at this point of his career, and the title is called 8.5 because at that point he had made 8 feature films and 1 or 2 like short segments of a film. So in his estimation, he made 8.5 movies before this, and so it's kind of like he took the process of writer's block and then made that the movie, I would say.
Yeah, he was facing writer's block while writing this movie. It is semi-autobiographical in the sense of it is literally a movie about a director struggling to make a movie that came to be because the director of the movie was struggling to come up with an idea of how to make a movie. In fact, in a letter that he wrote a few years before he first outlined the film idea, he wanted it to be a man suffering from creative block, but he didn't know who that person was going to be. Was they going to be like a writer, producer. Has to interrupt the usual rhythm of his life for 2 weeks because of a not too serious disease. It's a warning bell. Something is blocking up the system. But he was unsure about what it was about and actually did not decide on it being about a director making a movie until the movie was already being shot.
It's important to note, if going on this topic, is that La Dolce Vita was such a huge success, and I think that played a part in his block, in that it was so big. It was such a huge success that perhaps it caught that in itself caused something. What do I do after I've done this? Is this my masterpiece? Is it downhill from there? I think that might have. I don't know this for a fact. I'm just surmising. Given how big La Dolce Vita became, it was a monster, an uncontrollable monster in that way.
I also think La Dolce Vita, like, for him, was his crowning glory. Like, it is, it has more pieces of him in it, despite the fact that this is semi-autobiographical for what he was going through at the time. I think there are more pieces of him in La Dolce Vita than there are in this. I don't know enough about Fellini's personal life to talk about his relationship with women, but this movie's kind of just exists in a weird thing. There's also a thing that I learned that I feel like I really need to discuss in order to put the weirdness of this movie into frame, and that is in like 1960, he got really into Carl Jung and dream interpretations and interpreting his dreams in that way. He also got really into LSD. I think that's really funny to me, because I do think that, like, there is a clear distinction between like some of his movies beforehand and then like the dreamlike state and weirdness and like fluidity of just like time and place that happens later on. Like, you watch his earlier movies and like they still kind of have this they're still more vibe than I think they are plot. I think he's always been more of a feelings guy. But they are straight to the point. Whereas this feels like I'm floating in a sensory deprivation tank and just hallucinating.
Yeah, he started out as an Italian neorealist. So he was the screenwriter of Rome Open City, which is
Rossellini.
usually like considered the beginning of Italian neorealism. So like his early movies were meant to be like cinema verite in a way, like probably before that term even existed. They were meant to be super realistic, and so him moving into surrealism, I think some of the hardcore fans of neorealism actually saw that as a betrayal, sort of like when Dylan went electric. But it is very interesting. I probably read a long time ago that he was into LSD, but I hadn't thought about it for a while. I did actually watch part of the commentary track for this movie on the Criterion channel. And yeah, I didn't get a chance to finish the whole thing, but they actually said, with regards to like the chaotic feeling, that he went into this movie and a few of his previous movies without a finished script, and he actually preferred that. He said something like the screenplay should be vague so that it can be molded when we're on set with the actors. And so a lot of the situations in this movie where the actors are like asking how big their roles are or what their roles are, those kinds of situations actually happened to him, I believe, because of his habit of starting the movie before the screenplay was finished.
There's also a weirdness to this, and it's because ADR was very prevalent in Italian cinema at this time, where it kind of feels like the script wasn't done and they're just mouthing things, and then they had to like overdub it. And that kind of adds to the weirdness of this movie a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. That was the basic style of Italian movies at this time. Like even if you watch spaghetti westerns, the dubbing always doesn't match the mouths, because I don't know if Fellini started this on this movie or in later movies, but definitely by the time of Satyricon, which was a few years later, he actually just told the actors to say the alphabet when they were reciting their lines, or like just count to 10 while they're on set saying their lines, and then they would dub their dialogue later. So their mouths truly don't match what they're saying most of the time, or in fact, ever, I would say.
I was wondering about that. I thought it was just because they didn't want to use like on-set mics or something.
Yeah, that's kind of just the way Italian movies were. The sets were super noisy, and they didn't want to quiet down for some reason. Actually, in the commentary track, they said part of the reason was that Italian studios had been built during the silent era, so they were not soundproof. So when sound came around, they just were super noisy, but they didn't want to rebuild the studios or add soundproofing or anything like that. So they just kept on this tradition of having a noisy set while filming, and then just adding dialogue later.
They kind of just said, this isn't a bug, it's a feature. And built it into the style. And I think it kind of just got worse and worse over the years.
Absolutely. I would just quickly add, if you watch Satyricon, the dubbing is way crazier than in this movie. Oh, but also another thing about the dubbing is that often in Italian movies, you would have actors from different countries coming in, and so they would be speaking different languages while saying their dialogue. And so in that case, like the dubbing would sort of cover that up. And I think you see this a few times in this movie. Like, for instance, Barbara Steele plays the young, black-haired girl who's like where is she on here?
Yeah, Gloria.
Yeah, Gloria. She plays like
the manic pixie dream girl.
White-haired friend man. I think his name was Mario or something. She's the one who like sort of goes crazy when the psychic tries to read her thoughts or whatever. But anyway, she's British, so her character is like speaking Italian this whole time, but I'm pretty sure she was just speaking English dialogue whenever she was on screen, and then they dubbed an Italian voice later.
You know, I wondered that about Barbara Steele myself, but she made a lot of Italian films, so it's very possible that she did a lot of those Mario Bava horror films. She did a lot of giallo films. So it's possible that she spoke, because I was thinking about that when she, because this was kind of, I was only familiar with her from her Italian horror movies. So seeing in her this almost feels like an oddball film for her, because it's not a horror film. So I thought about that, wondering whether or not she actually spoke Italian. Not that it would matter in this film, since they just ADR'd all the voices. But
yeah, it seemed to me like most of her dialogue she was speaking Italian, but definitely the stewardess in the harem sequence was speaking English, and then dubbed Italian.
I don't think they did it in this one, but there are quite a few Italian movies from this time frame where there's a different actor speaking than there is an actor playing the role. But I think everybody in this uses their own voice, I think. But speaking of the harem scene, let's talk about it, because that is an interesting scene. Is Guido like exploitive of women, or does he like revere them? Is he putting them on a pedestal? Like, what is his relationship with women?
So
Because boy, oh boy, is it bonkers.
here's my read on that scene specifically. I don't know if it translates into the rest of the film because we constantly see him like cheating on his wife and stuff. But I think that scene is him specifically like wishing for things to go back to the way they were, the way that he was raised, surrounded by a bunch of women who just were there to take care of him and do nothing else. And like kind of childhoodness, like nostalgia for childhood and not having responsibilities.
I don't know if I had ever thought this previously, but I came away from this viewing thinking that Guido adores women, and that and needs them. All women, every woman, whatever woman's available. I think he doesn't. I think he's lost without women. I don't think he's a misogynist. I don't think his thing for women is a need to control them necessarily. I just think that his world is just kind of incomplete. Probably a mother complex. Probably some Oedipal things going on there. Italian men, generally speaking, are very close to their mothers as a culture, but I would wonder if Guido's love for his mother goes into the Freudian, maybe. I just thought of that just now, so I can't speak to how accurate that is. But I just came away from the sense that women were, outside of creating films, women were the most important thing, and he's lost without them.
Wasn't he raised by nuns though? He didn't grow up with a mother, did he?
No, he had a mother.
Yeah, we meet his parents in the
Yeah,
beginning.
we meet his
You're right.
parents.
Yeah, you're right.
He definitely had a very religious upbringing, which also kind of plays into his relationship with women of, hiring a prostitute to dance for them, which
Right.
we were watching it and Ryan goes, yes, the 12-year-old boys of the town gathered their money together to have the prostitute dance for them on the beach.
I did not connect the dots because the kid that he's supposed to be when he's at like, is it, I thought it was orphans. I don't know. But then we do meet his mother who had died. I don't know. I got confused.
Yeah. I mean, it's a confusing movie.
Catholicism,
but
I mean, this is Italy. Catholicism is so endemic in every single part of Italian life that he went to a religious school, and it's very. I don't know what the school system was like in Italy even now, but at that time, it could be that they all went to schools that were sponsored by the church.
Yeah.
Yeah, but the point that I was trying to make, he was punished for it very heavily.
Yeah. For that act specifically.
Yeah, which honestly feels like nothing.
Interesting factoid I came upon that I did not know. Apparently, the Vatican put this on their list as one of the greatest films ever made. So take that for what you will.
I mean, it's definitely not like against the church in any way, shape, or form. He's still very like reverent of the church. In fact, I had to like look up certain things because one, they always refer to the cardinal as the Prince of Church, which is a phrase that I had never heard before and had to go look up. But also the steam baths are not something that I know a lot about.
Yeah, watching it this time, I was definitely struck by how super Catholic it is. And watching the commentary track was also interesting because there are a lot of Catholic references that might not come through to like a modern American audience. But like, for instance, going into the steam baths was kind of supposed to be like a descent into hell, sort of like Dante going into hell. And also one weird factoid that I hadn't noticed until the commentary pointed it out is that in the flashback where he gets punished for um, getting the prostitute to dance on the beach, all of the priests in that sequence are played by women except one. So
Hmm.
it's one bald man, but the rest of them are just old women. And so I don't know. I'm not entirely sure what that's supposed to mean because, of course, in reality, at that time in Italy, they would have all been men. But apparently, Fellini commented on this and he said that he wanted them to be played by women because all of the old man extras would look too much like worldly men. It's kind of weird, but it's like some weird prejudice that he had in his mind about how older actors will just not look enough like priests and older women will somehow be more pure or like I don't know, like they hadn't experienced as much worldly life as the men would, so he just made them all women. But yeah, anyway.
It's interesting that you brought up. It's interesting that you brought up Dante because one of the things that I realized this time watching it, first off, I question whether she's a real person or whether she's just something in Guido's head. Claudia seems to be the equivalent of Dante's Beatrice in the Divine Comedy, and because there's she up until the end, until that sequence when they drive off in the car, she doesn't criticize him, and she seems to be the perfect woman. He, you could say, we don't actually see him worship her in any way, but there's something about her and the way he behaves around her that is very different from the way he behaves around other women. So I think she's kind of his ideal woman in the same way that Beatrice, who has a big role in the Divine Comedy, and and Dante's character, who is the person who experiences everything in the Divine Comedy, talks a lot about her, and she's kind of like his guide. I think if he tries to live his life in such a way that he would not ever offend Beatrice, and I think there's some of that character, and we see it a lot also in a film that is got a big connection to this in Bob Fosse's All That Jazz, in which Jessica Lange, who plays Death, Jessica Lange's character of Death is kind of like Beatrice in the Divine Comedy as well. So I had never thought about this before, and I'm interested into looking further into whether Beatrice was a direct influence on that character or not. But I think it's an interesting literary tag to pursue.
I mean, Claudia is definitely his ideal woman, and in my head, she doesn't exist.
Yeah.
Like, in my head, she is entirely fantasy. And just as a note, because this is unfortunate news that I had to write down when I was doing my research, but Claudia Cardinale, who is the actress who plays Claudia, unfortunately died on the 23rd. So
she had a good long life.
She had a good long life, but died the same night that I watched this movie, coincidentally.
No.
I want to talk about the end of the movie.
Okay.
How do you interpret the ending? Because it is very, very vague and very, very up to interpretation.
I've always, this sequence always reminded me of the end of The Seventh Seal. And I I wonder if Guido dies at the end of the film, not on camera, but I have this sense, the first thing we hear about him is that he has a cancer of the liver or something going on with his liver, and that's why, he's going to the spa, and then we see him try to commit suicide underneath the table, and I wonder if this is. It would be interesting if Fellini was thinking about Bergman and the death dance at the end of the Seventh Seal when he did this, because it feels he shoots it in profile. He shoots a lot of it in profile like this, which is very much how we see it at the end of the Seventh Seal. Again, something I think I've thought about it, but I never had to put it in words before watching the film for this discussion group. So it's something that I think I want to look at along with the Dante reference at all. But I wonder if he's dead at the end.
I mean, he also has the fantasy of getting shot like under the table, like right before the ending of this. Yeah, shooting himself. This is not the original ending for the movie. This entire sequence of like the band coming in and playing and all the characters joining hands and walking around in a circle was entirely filmed for promotional purposes. It was meant to like promote the film and was never meant to be in the film whatsoever. The initial ending for the movie had Guida and Luisa sitting together in the restaurant car of a train bound for Rome. And Guido looks out the window to see all the characters of his film smiling ambiguously at him as the train enters a tunnel. One of the other scriptwriters did not like that ending. He thought that it was too direct in the fact that Guido dies. He thought it was the only way that it could be interpreted, and that he needed to abandon the implicit theme of suicide for an upbeat ending. So they just chose to use this.
Well, a marching band is pretty upbeat.
The original ending that you just described is very interesting because it kind of bookends the opening sequence where he's being stared at from the people in the cars. And a new idea occurred to me, and I'd never thought about this before. I think that whole scene represents a movie theater, and he is the movie, and the audience is all staring at him, waiting for him to do something. And then and then he's got to escape because all these people are like, and that's part of what the film is about. Again, I think it's something that might have occurred to me before, but didn't until I sat there and watched it and tried to put everything in words. It's such a fantastic sequence. And then to have him float, over the ocean, and then to have the rope disconnect and he falls. I mean, it's just, but yeah, I thought that was that would make a good bookend, the ending that you described. But the metaphor of the movie theater, of him being in a movie theater and he is the film and everybody in the cars are watching him, waiting for him to do something, I think is an interesting.
And it also comes back to the whole, like, he's feeling a lot of pressure after the success of La Dolce Vita. And that's something that is very, very common for a lot of artists, is when you have something suddenly faced with a lot of success, you suddenly feel the pressure of needing to create the next thing. I talk about this all the time with books, where there are a lot of book series that I love that will never be completed because there's no way for the authors to complete it in a way that's going to satisfy everything, and that pressure just ruins the entire thing for them. And it kind of has that vibe to it of like, and it does. And I'm happy you brought up the beginning because it's on my list of things I want to talk about, but there is a lot to talk about with this movie, and I unfortunately only have an hour. So I'm picking and choosing. I love the opening sequence, and I think that it definitely plays into that being a huge part of the creative block.
Yeah.
we are coming up on an hour in a little bit. I want to make sure everybody has gets to talk about what they want to talk about, but I also really want to talk about the score. Because we don't talk about the scores a lot on this call, and we really should. But I really like the score for this one because it's all just circus marches, like for the most part, and it kind of plays into this whole thing being a spectacle. Like to go back into the he's feeling very, very watched and like all eyes are on him. This entire thing just kind of feels like a performance. It's a series of performances that you are watching people do.
Yeah, totally. Like, I think, yeah, the composer is Nino Rota, who's most famous for the Godfather theme. And I would say, like, Fellini definitely had well, he was a huge fan of the circus. And so I think that's my thought when I'm watching the ending of this movie the way that it is. Not the original one on the train, but this marching, and where the director sort of becomes a ringleader of these circus performers who are sort of marching around. But yeah, the music definitely adds to this circus feeling. I think Fellini returned to themes about the circus again and again. Before this movie, he made La Strada, which, well, not right before this movie, but a few movies before this, he made La Strada, which is all about a clown and her strongman. I think he's her husband at first, but then, like, after this movie, after Eight and a Half, made a couple of movies that I can't remember that well because I think they get a bit repetitive, but like his movies in the 70s and I think into the 80s returned to the circus again and again. But anyway, yeah, the music is excellent in this, as well as like the rumba that Seragina, the prostitute, dances to. And yeah, it's just great music all around.
As our resident musician here, Tim, what were your feelings on it?
I can't say that I love the score. I like the score. The fact that the score disappears somewhat for me. I mean, it's that says if I don't notice the score, I think of that as a good thing usually. So, but I also noticed some source music in here from. There was a couple of pieces of there was a couple of classical works in here that I recognized immediately, which I thought was an interesting choice. I wonder why Fellini decided to use those, and rather than have Rhoda create original music, and I find it interesting that the music that I remember most is the stuff that Rhoda didn't write. Rhoda didn't write. There's a joke there somewhere, but it's probably not appropriate right now. The score does what it's supposed to do for the film. This is theoretically, like for this scene, the music is the implication is that the music is diegetic. It's it's not some music coming from outer space to tell the audience what to feel. And I love that when the score adds to the film in without telling the audience what to feel. I don't think Rhoda ever does that here.
I will say that it drove me crazy as a former member of a marching band watching these guys at the end of the film, because they were so off step. It was driving me nuts.
It's part of the comedy of the whole thing.
Yeah, this is supposed to be a comedic film. And in fact, I think he had to have a note by the camera at all points in time, but just said, remember, this is a comedy. So the question is, was this a comedy?
I laughed.
There was a funny moment where in towards the beginning of the movie where they're just like panning across the extras that are sitting in the garden drinking the holy water, and a woman looks at the camera and then like quickly looks away like she made a mistake. And I was like, what was that? Everybody else is making eye contact. I don't know why she thought that was so okay.
Yeah, you should definitely watch Satyricon. The actors are constantly looking at the camera in that one.
Well, everyone was looking at the camera though.
Yeah,
So.
I think it is just a style that Fellini started maybe with this movie. I can't remember it in his previous movies, but it goes way into the stratosphere, like in the Satyricon.
Yeah,
but,
no, I mean, in that particular scene in this one, I found it funny that she did that because I thought it was intentional, that everyone was looking at the camera as if it's like a character in the scene. We're like, we're breaking the fourth wall here. And so this woman's reaction was just entertaining to me.
There was something, I think, Beckett, I think it was you who said that that you found the fantasy sequences more interesting than the real life sequences.
Rebecca, I didn't say that.
Rebecca. Okay. The thing about Fellini's films, and I think you probably start to see it in Nights of Cabiria, but I really noticed it here, is that Fellini, his background actors, he always casts people who have something very unusual about their faces or their body or their body language. They always, if you watch what's going on among the background actors, you will always find something interesting to look at. It's one of the things that Fellini, I think, does so very well. And then you take a film like Amarcord from 1974, which is a love letter to his growing up in Italy, in pre-fascist, just immediately pre-fascist Italy. Oh, actually, no, it's as Italy is becoming a fascist state. And all these, you remember, there's a huge cast of actors, and I promise you can remember every single one of them, even if you don't know exactly who they were or what they were there for, because they all have these just unique, almost caricature-like faces. I think it's one of the things that Fellini does so very well.
Yeah, totally. Like I think the characters in this movie are extremely vivid. Like even when they have a very small part, like all of them are memorable, at least to me. And oh yeah, and the previous question about comedy. Yeah, I think this movie is very funny. I kind of get the same feeling that I get from David Lynch movies, wherein, like, if you look at the movie as a whole, you might be confused by part of it, but if you look at it on a scene by scene basis, you are getting comedy and like good entertainment on a moment by moment basis. But I think overall, I think I would prefer David Lynch's movies, but maybe if I was Italian, I might prefer Fellini. But yeah, the thing about the actors is also very true that yeah, they all look very unique. And in watching the commentary track, I learned some interesting things about some of them. Like, for instance, the magician guy with the big nose, that actor later became a moderate Islamic teacher, and he eventually issued one of the only non-moderate things that he did was he issued a fatwa against Pope Benedict. And so yeah, Like he's fully. Oh yeah, and the tap dancing sailor guy who's only in a few shots. He was apparently like he was actually doing that on set, and then Fellini just decided to put him in the movie. Like he was actually tap dancing off of frame, but then Fellini decided to put him in. Just things like that. Like the whole cast, including the background actors, are just full of interesting people and yeah, interesting faces, interesting everything, I would say.
Yeah, I
Huh.
enjoyed watching the background in this movie, which is not something that you say that often. But one thing I wanted to point out was the dance scene with the dark-haired girl, Gloria, and Mario. That Tarantino pulled that out and put it in Pulp Fiction, just like frame for frame, practically. I was like, oh, I see the inspiration here.
We are coming up on the hour, so is there anything else that anybody wants to bring up?
When you first brought up wanting to do a Fellini film, and I think you were leaning towards 8.5 already, and I was. I think this is, if you haven't seen a Fellini film, this is a difficult film. Can be a difficult film because of its surrealism and all the Freudian, Jungian, metaphorical stuff going on. I highly recommend that you take a look at La Strada, which I think is his most heartbreaking film. His wife, Giulietta Messina, is the female lead in that. And Anthony Quinn is her brutal overseer. It's such a great film, and it's humanistic, and it's got a sense of plot that I think is harder to find in his other films of the era. And I just think for somebody who's just coming to Fellini for the first time, it's a good place to start. It's not really a happy movie, but it's extremely accessible. Go there, and then maybe jump to 1974 and watch Amarcord, his love letter to his childhood home. Those are good places to. I beg that if you did not enjoy this film or were very lukewarm about it, go back and watch those two films. There's and I think you could come to appreciate more of what Fellini is about.
Yeah, totally. And I would also add that I think Giulietta Messina is absolutely brilliant. She's actually maybe one of my favorite actresses. So I am slightly disappointed that she's not in eight and a half, but and I don't think she's in La Dolce Vita either. But
No.
yeah, she was in like a bunch of other Fellini movies, and she's fantastic. And La Strada is a great movie, and I agree that it is like a more straightforward and emotional plot than this. Actually, that reminds me, when Rebecca started this session, she said that she wanted like um, the opinion of someone who's not connected to the movie industry to give their opinion. And of course, I'm not that person, but I'm also curious about this because, like, watching 8.5 this time, it kind of struck me that, like, there's not that much for the average person to relate to in this. It's all about, like, and unless they um, relate to like some of the fantasies about women or fantasies in general, but like this thing is entirely about like the creative process and being stuck creatively. So it makes me wonder if like an average person would get anything out of this movie. But just to tie it to La Strada, I think La Strada is, um, you know, much more relatable to um, other people. It's not just like a self-contained, self-indulgent thing like this movie.
We just broke an hour.
Yes.
Oh no. Are we all
Um,
going to disappear?
We're all gonna explode.
Yeah, I was trying to stop this from happening, but anyways, it was good having this discussion with y'all.
So are we cut off at that point?
No, I'm going to end it, unfortunately, for the hour. But I really enjoyed this discussion, and I look forward to talking about more movies with y'all.
Yeah.
Definitely.